let's talk for a few minutes about writing. Um, to reiterate what I've been saying probably in every recording so far, Mitch Bardwell notes the value is on writing with clarity, precision, and conciseness. And this is someone who works for, or worked at the time for Canon, a large company. This is reiterated over and over again from people in the business world. This is what's appreciated. This is what's noticed. This is what will allow you to be an effective communicator. So it's incredibly important to remember that. One of the ways to get clarity is to really consider your word choice, to make sure you're using the most effective language, which is not always the longest words, right? But just really the best words, and that you are communicating succinctly. And you can see in these examples, which of course are over the top ridiculous, but look at number one, or letter A. The original plan to reschedule Monday's canceled meeting to today is again changed, with the new meeting time agreed upon to be at 3:30 tomorrow unless Regina cannot attend, in which case we will reschedule at a later date, no later than Friday of this week. Now it's tempting to add all these little tails, these little extras. It makes us sound important. It can make us, we think it makes us sound smarter. But the problem is the actual information you're trying to convey is completely buried in this nonsense. So if you really boil it down, you could instead communicate by simply saying today's rescheduled meeting has been postponed until 3:30 Wednesday. You have boiled it for simplicity and for clarity. Really, really important. So truly consider how you're using language. If those extra words are necessary, are they adding to the clarity or are they taking away from it? It's really important to think about that. Now, oftentimes, especially as we've gone more and more remote, your writing is often your first impression that you're making. Sometimes it's the only impression that you're making. And you know, we spend a lot of time communicating casually through text, through social media, and our grammar has, maybe taken a hit. You will be judged for better or for worse on your ability to write well, regardless of whether you're in a writing heavy profession or not. It will be a reflection on you. And so your ability to write well will serve you no matter what you find yourself doing once you leave school. As Sheila Lester Smith noted, when I look at documents that come over my desk, I spend quite a lot of time editing them. I seldom think the English is good enough. And again, this isn't an English teacher. She's a VP, so just keep that in mind. I've collected some of the most common mistakes that are made because these will not show up when you run a simple spell check, right? Because they're actual words. The problem is they have different meanings. And you know what? They're so common, you've got to just memorize them. The words with contractions are the easiest to understand and make sure you're using correctly, because that contraction, that apostrophe, is taking the place of a letter. So there, with an apostrophe, is actually they are. So if you could make a sentence with they are, so instead of they're coming to the barbecue, they are coming to the barbecue, then you know you've got the right there. These two, THEIR, simply it belongs to somebody. It's theirs. As opposed to THERE, which is a directional. It's over there. You just got to memorize it. And it's the same with your and your, right? Affect and effect are tricky. I struggle with them. Another good thing to know is know what you don't know, so that you know that you might have to go look something up, right? What I find funny with these two is if I just write at my normal pace, I tend to use them correctly. But if I slow down and overthink it a bit, I tend to be paralyzed. So some people find, it easy to remember that affect is a verb, effect is a noun. Whatever works for you, that's another typical mistake. You see this one all the time on social media. This one, for some reason, is my little pet peeve. It drives me crazy. Loose is L-O-O-S-E. Lose is L-O-S-E. Different words. But again, spell check isn't going to pick them up. Same with the twos. And of course, we all know there's a lot more, but those are some that are very common, and you just need to get them into your head and use them correctly. Most punctuation we tend to have a pretty good grasp on. Here are some that we tend to struggle with, specifically apostrophes and semicolons. So apostrophes, as we know, one of the uses is for contractions, your, theirs, that's, that kind of thing. We're pretty good about those. The other place we use apostrophes is where the confusion begins. What they're doing in most cases is showing ownership. And very simply, apostrophe S is singular, S apostrophe is plural. So let me show you what I mean. If the boy owns a puppy, it's owned by the boy, right? That shows ownership. It's the boy's puppy. And there's only one boy. Then it's B-O-Y apostrophe S. The apostrophe S is singular. It shows there's one boy. But maybe there's brothers. Maybe there's 3 boys that own this one puppy. So you still have ownership. You still need an apostrophe. But in this case, there's more than one boy. So it's B-O-Y-S apostrophe. If you can just, it's one of those things that I think we overcomplicate in our youth and then we tend to avoid as we age. But this is an important punctuation mark, and it's pretty easy to understand and start using it correctly. Then the other one that tends to cause people problems are semicolons. Semicolons' main purpose, they do some other things, but their major purpose is to separate 2 complete sentences. So if you think back to those 8 parts of speech, remember we learned those back in the day, nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, etc., etc. A complete sentence has to have a subject and a verb. So a subject is a noun or a pronoun, and a verb is a verb, right? It's either an action or a to be verb. Sentences, of course, have way more than that. All the other stuff is kind of decorative and gives you a lot more information. But to have a complete sentence, you have to have a subject and a verb. And if you have 2 complete sentences, you cannot separate them with just a comma. That is called a comma splice. Commas are not strong enough to separate 2 complete sentences, so you use a semicolon. Could you also put a period and make it into 2 complete sentences? You sure could. But look at these short sentences. I ran to my house, it was pouring. It might feel really choppy if we were to make that into 2 singular sentences. So by putting a semicolon, it gives it a little more flow, right? So that's the other typical one that I see. Some other things of note, capitalization. Remember the difference between proper nouns and regular nouns? Proper nouns are capitalized. What are proper nouns? Names, places, titles, races, ethnic groups, religions, brand names, months, businesses. Capitalization is something that we've really abandoned in this texting world. You need to bring it back. Just as a little side note, you know what's not capitalized? Seasons. Seasons are not capitalized. I know, who knew? And then we have good old sentence structure. So what did I say above? A complete sentence has to have a subject, a noun or a pronoun, and a verb, right? So these are 3 errors. These are 3 sentence structure problems. The most common are fragments. They're incomplete. They're either missing the subject or the verb or both. So in this first example, Carly the dog, we've got the subject, but what about him? We have no verb. They're not doing anything. Look at the second one, ate my shoe. Well, now we have a verb, something ate, but we have no subject. And then this third one, in the garden. This example has neither subject nor verb. It's a prepositional phrase. It adds extra information, but in and of its own, it cannot hold up as its own sentence. It does not have a subject or a verb. You might notice that you could actually make all this into one sentence. Carly the dog ate my shoe in the garden. You'd need a little punctuation. You'd probably want some commas before the and after the dog. Carly the dog ate my shoe in the garden. But that's this is the most common sentence structure issue I see. So if I'm noting to you that you have fragments and you're not quite getting it, what I've noticed is it tends to be an ear thing. You tend to train your ear to hear it. You can also look in your textbook under sentence fragments. It's under S for sentence fragments, and there's some discussion there. You can go online and Google it. Purdue OWL is a great source for looking at different grammar rules. but it's really important to strengthen your writing to avoid fragments. Run-ons simply have abandoned punctuation. These are pretty rare. I think most people tend to understand that you need punctuation in a sentence. Think of the punctuation as kind of the road signs, to keep the drive smooth. And then, as I said, comma splices are when you have two complete sentences that are separated by a comma instead of a semicolon. The ride in was windy, complete sentence. My car almost veered off the road, complete sentence. The comma is not strong enough. You need to have a semicolon. So that is my short and dirty little discussion of some common issues. As I mentioned, your book has sections on different parts of punctuation. Just go to, they're all by letter, right? So like there's a section on semicolons, go to the S's. Fragments are under sentence fragments. There's some basic writing information. And then, as I said, another really useful resource that you might like is Purdue Owl. It's Purdue, like the chicken brand, Purdue, Owl, OWL. Really, really helpful stuff. Hopefully this enlightened you a little bit, and I will see you soon. Bye.